Hey everybody, welcome to Color Space Cadets. This is episode 7, and we're talking about getting into the industry. And what I want to do is to thank LG, who are sponsoring this episode of the Cadets. And behind me, you can see the LG Ultra Wide and the OLED Pro, the 950. If you join us, you'll be able to win one of these coming up. That will be a webinar coming up on September the 22nd. And you can get information of that, where you can join and how you can join into it. We'll put the notes in the links of how you can join that, and then you can register, and that will be, as I said, September the 22nd at different time zones.
It's a pretty awesome monitor. I've started using that as well. The 32-inch I've been using, OLED Pro.
Yeah.
And
I really like it, and I've been using it here for, I'm going to say, 2 months in the shop. So it's looking really good, and obviously, yeah. So
yeah, it's an RGB OLED.
I'm going to kick off the event by introducing our panel, and we've got up in the top row there, Michael. Michael, can you tell us your story?
Well, I've worked as an editor and a colorist for about the last 10 years. I also run an MA in post-production, and we work across Adobe, Avid, and DaVinci Resolve. I also design courses for post, for color. I'm an Avid instructor and a DaVinci Resolve certified trainer. That's the short me.
Yeah, we haven't got time for you, a long one. Thank you. So you're sort of here, I was going to say, sort of pushing the film school angle of how anyone can get into the industry, which is great to have that side of things. Excellent. Thomas, how are you, buddy?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you for jumping on board. I know we've tried to get you on a couple of these things before, so it's good to come in. Can we just have your story, please?
Yeah, as brief as possible. I went to Bournemouth Film School. So obviously we're talking a little bit about film school. I worked for a manufacturer, worked for a company called Quantel for about a year. I worked for MPC as an online editor and colorist for 4.5 years. Set the Look up in 2007, just as myself, and we're now a team of 20, 16 in London, 4 in Cardiff. We specialize in mostly high-end TV drama, picture post-production. So we've got a mix of producers, coordinators, colorists, online editors, conform artists. And we've done shows like Top Boy, Sex Education, Landscapers, Gangs of London, and shows like that.
Excellent. Very good. Toby?
I've been a colorist for 14 years. About 7 years ago, I set up my company Cheat. And we now do, as well as color grading, we do finishing online and 2D VFX. There's a team of 5 colorists and 3 juniors, and that's not including our remote colorists. So in total, I think we have about 11 colorists that we represent now. I also went to Bournemouth Film School, and we're doing more and more TV and episodic, as well as sort of short form commercial stuff, which is sort of, I guess, what Cheat was traditionally known for over the years.
Well, that's a good rap for Bournemouth Film School, then, I'd say.
But yeah, the Bournemouth Mafia.
And Kevin, just remind people what you're about at the moment.
I'm head of color at Mission, where I look after workflows and DITs and color management. Still coloring through Final Color, and of course consulting and instructing at iColorist. I didn't go to Bournemouth Film School, although I did go to the London College of Printing, strange enough, to do a degree in, I did a BA in photography, film and television, and I've been a colorist for 38 years.
Excellent. You beat me by a few there. I don't think they had film schools when I was a lad. It's that far back. So I didn't go that route myself. I went down the traditional start as the runner, work your way up in Soho route. But everyone's different. So that's the sort of thing we're going to talk about today.
Well, just to cut in there, Warren, you still have to be a runner after the film school. there was no shortcut.
No, there is. Well, there's lots of different routes, isn't there? And that's some of the things we'll chat about here. I'm based down here in Australia, working out of Brisbane. So there's a real mixture of work here, but similar to London, just less of it, I suppose you could say. But I just still enjoy it after a number of years colouring. It's still good fun industry to be in. It's just changed, that's all. So let's talk about the film school route. As you guys had all been there or been to some sort of college or university. Do you, when you are looking at hiring, I'll start with you, Tom. Do you see that as a really good qualification if someone comes to you looking for a job? It doesn't, maybe it's not a colorist job, or maybe they've done the all-round uni film school. Is it something still valid that you're looking at today if you're hiring someone?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously can help. I mean, you know, your career can be advanced, in my opinion, by a degree, and particularly by a degree from a recognized high quality university. I think with the cost of going to university now, we do a lot of mentoring with 16 to 18-year-olds, where they are constantly making a decision about which university to go to. If you are going to a university that has a very good reputation, you're going to get the chance to pick up a lot of equipment and do the directing, do some editing, hopefully come out focused. And I'm not talking about the NFTS because obviously that's very specific. But if you come out and you have a reel at the end of it, and you've been working in some form of nonlinear editing package for 2 or 3 years, you're certainly going to find yourself probably fast tracked a little bit quicker when you come in to industry. So I think it does give some benefit. Whether or not it gives you £50,000 worth of benefit when you take in, and I think that's probably what we can maybe discuss as a group. So I think if you are going to go to university, great idea. You meet a lot of alumni, particularly if you're around London and people are going to move to London. So that could be great. Well, I lived with all my film school friends for a few years and had a wonderful time. It's great. I've made lots of friends. But I paid £3,000 a year, not $9,000. So I think you have to take that into account. I think if you go to Bournemouth, Ravensbourne, I think there are quite a few others actually that have now become very, very good. I think if the course is good and the quality of the graduates are good, then I think it's a sensible option. Brilliant.
Toby, someone knocks on the door at Chi. Is it a thing you're looking for, or are you not too worried?
Certainly, sort of agreeing with Thomas. Really, it helps. It gives a sort of foundation of filmmaking, I suppose, that is quite useful to have. But on the other side, as well as the money, it's 3 years, and it's whether or not that's worth it or not. I don't really know. And I would say that out of the 60 or so people that were in my year, about 6 of them are still in the industry. So, and that's Bournemouth Film School, which is one of the better ones. So, yeah, it's a tricky question.
Yeah, let's go to Michael with those sort of stats. Is that probably a good indication, Michael, of how many people do get a job afterwards?
Well, I specialise in post at the Met Film School in London, and I would say that from the MA and from the short courses, 90% of the people are working in the industry and they continue to work. So I think it is about, this is from the post side of things, and they're working at Frame Store and they're working at MPC, they're working at Absolute Post, they're working across a range of things. And I think that when you're in post, you have to have technical skills, the critical skills, the creative skills, and good communication. My job has also been to try to introduce that across the school, and so to make sure that people have a better relationship with post, and then I think they can have a better relationship with production. Ultimately, you're going to finish your film, and you do really need to start to understand the language of color to start to be able to talk to colorists, to talk to online editors. So I think, again, it's the course. I think it's using industry professionals to teach those courses, and to really come in with that willingness to learn. So I think you find a lot of the people in the industry really want to be there. They want to learn, they want to be flexible, you know, that type of thing.
All right, cool. Now, the other thing I hear, and I'll stay with you, Michael, with this. Now, it's hard to get into a film school. Whether that is true and whether it is, obviously, there's a financial barrier to some schools. Is it quite a big step for people to get in? Do you have to do an exam to get in? Do you have to show reels? How does it work?
Yeah, so I think that for film schools, generally people have to show that they've worked in the creative industry. So some are coming into cinematography via photography. So it's the sort of creative pathway. I think they're more, it's wider now in terms of people being able to get into film schools. I think at the undergraduate level, you sort of appreciate that people have had limited experience. They're going to have made a short film, but I think it is important that they can demonstrate an understanding of filmmaking as well.
Yeah, excellent, good. But they're great. They're good numbers, by the way, in your department of people sticking with it and coming out the other side with a job.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you come into post, you've got to be passionate about post. All of you know that you pull those long hours, and you've really got to come in and actually enjoy it, enjoy the challenge. And I think that's a really important part. So a lot of people have decided, I've got a lot of students who've had a career, then decided to come in. And so they're really, really focused.
Yeah.
Kevin,
I'd
just like to throw in there, sorry. When it comes to doing a 3-year course, it's not just the money, it's the time. You know, would you be better served spending 3 years in the industry or 3 years in a college, in a university course? And I think often it comes down to opportunities. If you have the opportunity to get in with a decent company, or in with Toby or Thomas or something like of that sort of caliber, I think from a career point of view, you're better off going straight into the industry. What the universities do and the film schools do very well is they give you a broad foundation. They help perhaps allow you to choose which discipline you're most interested in. And they give you the contacts to get into the industry, not just people on the course, not just instructors, but also work experience and exposure. So I think that's something to bear in mind. You don't have to have a degree.
No.
There is, I mean, there are, I don't know, there's other benefits, I think, going to film school that might not speed up your entry into the industry. But when you start grading and working with clients, if at film school, you know, you learned about film history and you watched loads of films and you discussed films and various theories and filmmaking, it does let you converse with directors and DPs in a way that shows them that you understand the filmmaking process and understand storytelling and those things on like a fundamental level. And the people at Cheat that have trained up without coming from film school is something they have to pick up very quickly and do. You know, it might not benefit your first 2 or 3 years, but it might benefit you as a colorist later on in your career.
Well, that's when the colorist says, Dante Spinotti, who's he? What's he done? True. Yeah. I get your point, Toby. Thomas, you had your hand up there. Did you want to chip in on the?
Yeah, I did, because I think there's one other thing that we have to look at, which is the emotional aspect of going to university or not going to university. There are some people that haven't been to university or aren't planning on going to university, who actually are just not mature enough to be in a job yet. Now, that's very difficult advice to give to people listening, because they won't know themselves very easily whether or not they're right and ready for employment. There is a big difference between an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old. And what university can give people that maybe are not mature enough, because they've not moved away from home at that point or gone straight from school, they might be able to at least grow into themselves and be independent. So I think you sometimes have to sit outside of what is the actual course that you're doing, but what it gives you as a person in terms of life experience, building friends, and you can't put a value on that. And when I asked my team here, I would say most of them have gone through university. It's not something that I particularly look for, but it shows that someone's stuck with a degree. I always say to them, you know, what do you think you got out of it most? They realized quite quickly they didn't learn that much compared with being within a specific sector, which is very focused, unlike a university degree. But they say, I wouldn't have given up the personal development, you know, the idea that you have to be very self-driven. So I think anyone who's considering university has to take into account whether or not they feel that that bonding with new people and moving away from home is going to be very beneficial for them, as opposed to just getting a job and actually being potentially missing out on the university experience and not having that many friends when they start their job.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's worth reminding people as well, from a colorist point of view, you're not going to get, I'm saying on a broad, I don't know about where you are, Michael, but on a broad, the film schools I've been into, you're not going to get a huge amount of color teaching during those 3 years. And the ones I've been into, you're going to be getting it from me anyway. So by far not the best start you're going to get. But so you're going there, as you said, for that all-round experience. Okay, so we've sort of discussed that. There's costs and there's going to be different costs. Let's go down the different route where, okay, you maybe have made some videos, you've done your own thing out of school, you maybe did some stuff in high school, and you want to get a job in the industry. Now, I heard on when I did my podcast with Rebecca Goodeve, that she came knocking on your door, Thomas. Is that right? Way back when? Is that true?
Yeah, it's a really nice story. It's a really nice story, and all credit to Rebecca, because it isn't done very often these days. It's sort of something that you only hear about. And I'm sure Toby and Michael talk at length about this, and Kevin would have seen this as well. But Rebecca did something unusual, which she printed out her CV and walked around to every post house and literally knocked on the door and said, "Here's my CV." And it just happened to be that I think I answered the door, because we were quite small at that point. And I said, "Let's do the interview right now." And I said, "Do you want to come do some work experience?" And it was great. And not many people do that. And I think that plays into the fact that most applications to this facility say, "Dear sir, madam, I love what you do as a company. Do you have any jobs?" They don't reference the company. They don't reference the work. They don't say, I really love sex education and I love what you guys have done with it. It's a show that really, they just literally find all the email addresses from some website, and then they wonder why they haven't got a job. So, I mean, I think we can touch on all those things when people can look around and say, "Oh, I spent an hour applying to jobs today. I did 50 post-production companies putting 'Dear Sir, Madam.'" Well, it shows that you've put absolutely no effort in at all. And I think whereas Rebecca, what she showed there was she came in and she was nervous. I mean, she was only 18 at that point, but she went on to have not have a career with us, but she did plenty of work experience and went on to Technicolor and various other places, and now a successful freelancer.
If someone wants to follow that, you can get that on iColorist. It's just on the Color Tour podcast. And I'll have to talk to you one day, because Toby's been on it. I'll have to get you on it. I've just missed you. I was in London and now back. But next time you're in. Like kids say that to me, you just apply online these days and they don't want people knocking on the door. Not true. You could get lucky like she did. You happen to be there in between jobs, having a coffee break. Let's talk to this person. You never
always
know.
Look at what I should say is anyone, it's so rare. Anyone who drops a CV off, if they make a good impression to reception, will say, "Oh, this person just dropped their CV off. They seem a really nice person. They wanted to come in and do a couple of days work experience." I'm like, "Yeah, let's get them in." But I would say this happens once every 6 months, maybe once a year.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I'd also, sort of on that note, sort of touch upon perseverance. Like an initial no might not be a no in 3 to 6 months' time. Like, it's constantly changing. People leave, people come, workload increases, you suddenly expand the business. It's worth, if you really want to work somewhere, don't be afraid to pester. No more than once a month, I would say, is an absolute limit. But like, keep coming back, and eventually it might work out.
There's no such thing as luck, is there? There's this opportunity meeting preparation. And I think Toby's absolutely bang on there. We have a vacancies email, and anyone who's ever emailed into it probably thinks it goes into a bottomless pit. Ultimately, it doesn't. When we're looking for a candidate for a role, we always go through the vacancies list, and we're looking for those people that have taken the time to write about what they're looking to do, why they like the company, and then we email them and we say, look, we're now emailing, you sent this 6 months ago. But we don't have infinite jobs. And I think what I would say to anyone listening is that you've got to put yourself in the position of the employer. You've got to think about, what is the employer? We're not always hiring. You can't be hiring every month. So sometimes you won't get a response. But if you've written something careful and you've taken the time, 6 months later, you'll get an email from us saying, we'd like you to come in for an interview. So it doesn't, as Toby said, always happen immediately. In fact, it's very unlikely it will happen immediately unless we are actively advertising for a position at that particular time.
Okay, great. Michael, do you help your students get placements or internships? Do you have relationships with companies?
Yeah, we have a small department called MetFilm Futures. And they help students with CVs. They build partnerships in industry. And I think that something that we try to kind of instill in students is that, this is a really disciplined industry. And I think that you go into that industry with time management, with good communication, and thinking about everybody pushing for efficiency. People are under really tight deadlines, and they need people who can come in and be trusted and be responsible. So it's sort of putting key words and key phrases that are also going to hopefully connect with companies. So yeah, we do have a dedicated department.
I think one of the themes here is, do your homework. And if you're going to apply to a company, or especially if you're going to visit a company, find out what they've done, find out who works there. Don't sort of just turn up at the door and expect to find out once you got there, because that does make a difference. There's a couple of questions that are coming in on YouTube. One is advice for mature students, supposing you're not 18, but supposing you're cross-training or coming into the industry from somewhere else. Michael, you have experience of that, don't you?
Yeah, with mature students, I think that you have a lot to offer. Oftentimes you're coming from a different sector, you're coming from engineering, you're coming from law. All of those skills are skills that are needed in this industry. And so, really consider that it's about the research, as you were saying, looking into the companies and what they require, what their philosophy is, but also thinking about your skill set and how you can adapt that skill set towards this new part of your new journey, let's say.
Indeed. When we had the physical colors mixers, and we're looking forward to getting back to those next year, one of the most popular sort of introductions was, how did you start as a colorist? Because almost everybody started, it may be changing now, but back in the day, everybody started from something else. And I think the important thing was that if you came in from editing, or if you came in from sound, or if you came in as a musician, even if you came in, I came in as a bit of a long story, but I came in from insurance, broking nuclear power stations and stuff. Everything that you do, every part of your life contributes in some way to your professional career afterwards. And you just have to find what that connection is.
So that's a good point. Yeah. So we've got to a point. We've got one question here. I think Thomas touched on it really. How do you stand out if you're not in the position to go knocking on the door and presenting? And I suppose that's in the way you present your cover letter, your CV. Is a CV still a thing in 2022, gentlemen?
I believe it is. And I think that, when we're looking for anyone again, we've got to think in terms of as an employer. So anyone who's watching this, to think about, okay, what are you looking for? Now, personally, I actually quite like people who've held down part-time jobs through university, who've maybe worked for 3 years in retail, hospitality, or anything else. When someone hasn't had any kind of part-time position or anything else, I always think it's actually a bit of a negative, because it's really nice to see that one of the references might be someone that was their shop floor manager or their bar manager for years. So I think that the CV is important. I also think it's important to have an objective at the top, and I think that CVs give you that. They can seem quite naff these days, but to actually think about what, that top paragraph, if you're me and I'm getting I get, dear sir, madam, I'm looking to get into the industry. Here's my attached cover letter. And it doesn't even say the look. It just says, I am a young, enthusiastic, colorist looking for a job. And it's pretty much the same. And here's some stuff that I've done. It's not necessarily going to stand out unless it says specifically about, why I wanted to approach you. Here's my specific work experience. I think work experience is extremely important. If I've seen that anyone's done work experience at other post houses, what they got out of it, that's very useful in a CV. And then you want to see a link to a Vimeo showreel. And then, I take a view that if there's only 3 or 4 things in there, that doesn't matter. If I've gone and hired people from Ravensbourne at their show, they might have 3 things in there. And I've gone, do you know what? I can really see some talent here. And I don't know, I can't speak for the other panelists, but I can usually spot when someone's got a bit of an eye for it. They've really put some care and attention. And if it's just loads of stuff that's hacked together and they're saying they're a colorist, and I think, oh, come on. You do, when you've been doing it a long time, you can spot people that have really cared about it. So if you combine that CV with a Vimeo link, with a cover letter that says, hi, Thomas, I really like Top Boy or whatever. And here's why I like it, not just I like it, but I love, this series, and I really would love to come and do work experience or meet you guys. That is so rare. Probably anyone who's watching this now is going to do that. That's why all those things are important, because you're looking to stand out. And
Tom, you've managed to name drop 2 big shows. Toby hasn't dropped 1 yet, so I'm waiting, Toby, till you drop a couple of big shows in there. Okay.
So I have another question.
This is going to hurt. Last year was a fun one. The end of the effing world. Both seasons they were.
Is that finished now, or is there more to come?
Yeah, no,
that's the effing world.
That's finished. There is no season 3 planned. And yeah, got some fun stuff coming up this year, which I'm not sure I can talk about, but great expectations.
Because I think
a good one.
I think when we met in Hackney would have been before COVID stuff. You just started probably prepping for that 2019. And I think when you then came on the podcast, you were right in the middle of it or done it. So yeah, it's a cool show. I liked it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. Sort of TV is now sort of half of our business at Cheat, revenue wise. So it's a big shift in a few years.
Yeah.
Guys, do you still take on runners, or are you looking for assistants most of the time?
So we try and hire from within as much as possible. So we actually, our office manager is moving into the assistant role. And yeah, it's we've had runners move into the assist role part-time, and it hasn't necessarily always worked out. And it's quite tough, because I think when I'm looking at assistant colorists, I need to believe that they will be a colorist one day. Otherwise, it's a waste of their time and it's a waste of our time. And that's something to bear in mind when applying for an assist position, because it is it is, or if not a colorist, a manager of a team that runs MCR. That's the other sort of potential route. But there's no, I don't know, I have to be very sort of selective with who gets the assistant colorist positions, because that could be going to someone that will be a future colorist. So they're very valuable spots within Chi. So yeah, it's pretty hard to recruit for them.
I would second that, actually, because I think that there is, and Kevin touched on it earlier, about it doesn't matter if you've been to university, you're still going to end up as a runner. Again, thinking it from an employer's perspective, me and Toby have both got quite a lot of, well, not a lot of employees, but we've got enough employees, and those people are serving their time of learning their skill set. And some of them, actually, they come in with very good show reels, but they still, I mean, we don't have just runners here. And I think that COVID had some impact on that. I think we have less running duties to do than a facility would have done maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So people are coming in actually as what we call tech ops, which are people that can do conforms and learn about data management and things like that. But obviously, if you come out and you say, well, I'm a colorist, I'm ready to come in as a junior colorist, then of course you've got to think about the people that are in that process within the look of getting into that role as a junior colorist and assistant colorist. And we take a long time here to promote people to colorists. So, I'm looking at 3 to 5 years of being here at the Look or another significant company before they're given the title colorist, because a colorist to me is someone that can sit in front of a client, including people like Netflix and directors, and that takes quite a lot of time. It's quite hard to put somebody who's maybe not experienced and then put them front and center for a color grading session with an executive producers, directors, DPs. It's not just like when you're at film school where you just sit and you're with a DP. You're with people that are, sometimes highly experienced, quite demanding, limited on time. When they say, let's bring out that person's face, it's got to happen then. And when they can't agree in the room, you've got to be able to negotiate in the room to defuse potential conflict. And actually the role as a colorist is probably, I think you touched on this earlier, Warren, is that to me, there are 3 parts to it. One is the third, they're all equal here, is social skills, negotiation skills, the ability to converse with a variety of different types of people, the technical ability, which a lot of students tend to have. They come in and they start telling me how HDR works, and they've learned a lot about it, which is really, really helpful. They understand ACEs, or at least the basics of ACEs, and they think I'm ready for a job. And the third is creative. But actually, over the course of a career, when you've been doing it as long as I have, the one that you're always developing as much as anything is conflict management and negotiation. So when someone says, I'm ready to be a colorist and I'm 23 years old and I'm a year out of university, I'm saying, well, you could probably do the grade, but can you do it quick enough? And are you prepared to sit in a room with all these guys, 6 of them, a mix of different opinions and agendas, and be able to negotiate that room? And I think that is probably the hardest bit. Toby, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's half of it, let alone a third. Yeah, and it takes time, and it's a skill, it's a muscle you develop, it's a skill you develop, either by sitting into sessions with senior colorists, which, I never had the opportunity to do. So I kind of, learned my own way through my early years, and sort of, I guess, developed my own skill set around client management. And it takes a long time before someone's ready to sit in the suite with clients. And I mean, the easiest way to sort of, I don't know, I've certainly had people think that they're ready and sort of throw them into the deep end and let them find out that they're, not necessarily ready. But it's also hard to keep staff as assistants as well, especially if they're good and they're doing good color work. And I have had some assistant / junior colorists that, I didn't think were necessarily quite there yet, be approached and poached by other companies that offered them a junior colorist position. So, there's this, from the eyes of the facility owner, you're sort of constantly finding this balance of pushing people forward, assessing if they're ready, trying to make sure that they're learning everything that they need to learn before they're moved on to the next role. But it's, you know, it's about appetite. It's about passion, you know, seeing the assistant ask the colorists questions and stuff like that. You'd be surprised how little, once they're in, they always sort of push forward and use what we have. In terms of
Kevin,
getting into
sorry, I was going to say, sorry, mate, I was going to say, are you both asleep up there, or are you still with us?
No. My assistant gets work pretty hard, so yes,
he's clocked off. He's not still on the pay. He's not still.
No, he's not on the payroll right now.
Is he?
Obviously, we're not saying anything interesting. I think that's the point.
No, he likes pressing buttons. I told him not to press any buttons right now. One of the questions in the chat, which I think is a good one, is given, and it's true that, you know, even when I started out, you never went in straight as an assistant colorist. You always went in to the company and then looked for that opportunity to arise inside the company. So the question is, what are the best jobs to look for, or what possible jobs can one look for with a view to being in the right place at the right time when an opportunity arises? And should it be a creative position or a technical position?
Well, we actually have a title here called Tech Ops, and that is a role that is conforming, as I said, data management. It will be grouping series for grading, so everything's grouped, so we can get straight in and apply stuff quickly. So it gives people access to the equipment. It's basic online skills. Some people are very clear that they want to be colorists quite early on, but they still go through that journey. What will happen is there'll be a deviation within about a year or so that they'll start doing balancing, match grading, not with clients. This will be done before a client comes in. Sometimes it's FOC, so free of charge. We don't charge a client for the time of the assistant colorist to go through. It's very much for their own career development. And I'll be there to support them. So I'll give notes and say, look, I've had to do quite a lot of matching here, or I haven't had to do a lot of matching. Your work has been really, really good. And they might spend quite a bit of time in that role. And then they'll make a decision at that point, whether they want to go the flame route or whether they want to be a colorist. So yeah, I think that's how everybody comes in. No one just comes in and says, I'm never going to learn conform. I'm just ready for, I mean, if they've got a great show reel and they've got a whole list of clients they're going to bring to the facility, then it's a different story, isn't it? But if someone comes and goes, oh, I'm only going to be a colorist and I don't want to do anything else, I'm like, okay, so where's the client roster? And am I going to be able to put these people in front of you? Are you ready to say to them that you're ready to grade this next series? The reality is that they can't. They want you to say, to say, as a facility, we're going to pay £300 or £400 an hour to sit with this person who's only been grading for 2 years. It's just not going to fly. So that's why you go through the journey that Toby talked about. And what I try and do is I bring in the assistants during the process. So I might take a break for half an hour, or Grace or some of the other team here might bring the assistants in and say, can you just run the session while I take a break for 20 minutes, half an hour? They get to meet the people. And then you can introduce that a little bit more. And through that way, you start to create familiarity. And familiarity with the client and that person is really important. There is always a fear of loss.
That's a good idea.
There can be a fear of loss if it's like, well, Thomas can't do that session, or Grace can't do that session, or Ollie can't do that session. It's like, well, who am I going to get? Who am I going to get? The panic that sets in. But if you say, well, you're going to get this person who you've actually met quite a few times over the last few weeks, then that's how you ease in. But it is a journey. And I can understand when you're 21, 22, and I've been there, everything you want to move so quickly. It's like, am I going to be a colorist by the time I'm 25? Am I going to do the new series of sex ed by the time I'm 25? And I'm 23 now. The reality is you're probably not, but you will be getting on it. You will be involved in the process, but you won't be the senior colorist at that stage. But it's just the way that things work. Otherwise, you've got to remember at the age of 25, if you've already grading those shows, what will you do when you're 65, unless you're planning on retiring at 30? Life is a bit of a journey. You've got 30 years. I mean, Kevin's been in this industry a long time, so as you are, you're still here. We're all still here.
I'm still struggling.
You're a senior colorist at 25. What are you going to do for the next 30 years?
Still looking for that job, Tom.
Yeah. Michael, you were nodding there.
Yeah.
I think it was about the tech ops.
Yeah.
The tech ops part. How do you teach? Do you have experts coming in teaching color, different disciplines, or do you sort of cover it yourself?
No, I have
school?
colorists come in and sort of working colorists come in and showing their particular workflows. What I tend to do is, and I've got quite a few students who've gone the tech op route, is we talk a lot about the research, kind of building references, making sure that you understand all of those films that people reference, you know, the top IMDb 100. Why is it that people are referencing those films? And, you know, also looking at, as I said, building a reference, making sure you understand art history and where art history fits into it. So I encourage students to take photography. You want to do a day for night. What does night look like? You know, it's kind of getting them into a thinking, and also being able to then start to talk about what colorists are doing. So what are they trying to achieve, and what happens? I think Thomas was mentioning before about negotiation. So in a very gentle way, starting them thinking about, well, say if the person doesn't like that look that you've created, what are you going to do next? Why don't you offer 5 looks and then think about what should those looks be like, and really trying to pull out conversation from them.
That's good.
But yeah, I think the tech op have a really good foundation while you're developing your creative side, but understand what creativity means. We have 100 years plus film history, and we have 2,000 years of art history. And so, you know, all of that has to come together.
Yeah.
What about
Kevin,
somebody?
I was going to say, we started a little company like 13 years ago, iColorist, training people in a classroom, but short form, not like a film school. How's that changed? And do you still think that's valid, like a valid thing that people should be going down? We obviously do, because we're still doing it. We're still offering certificates. So how do you feel that's changed? And do you think it's a good way that people can get up the ladder, so to speak?
Absolutely. I mean, I trained with Kevin. I remember our trip out in LA, and it was a massive step. I mean, I've done a lot of things. I've worked in production. I was a runner. I did first AD. I did some directing. And so everything that you can learn means that you understand more and more of the picture. And just being able to work with somebody, I think, I'm not sure if it was Nucoda we were working on, but just the challenge of using a new system. And so one of the things which is very different to when I started was that actually you can get a Baselight download and try it out, or a Nucoda download. Resolve is free. So spend that time looking at these systems. There's so much which is online, so many people talking about the importance of color, so many people giving fantastic, including yourselves, advice, you know, places to continue to learn. And that's the thing that I've loved about Post. I'm constantly learning, and I love learning new things. And now you're in an environment where you're able to do that. So you can really spend a lot of time researching, learning new tools, and finding out the questions. Colorists are always doing articles about the challenges of particular jobs that they've had. So there's a lot of information to absorb, and then be able to bring that to you into the workplace.
I think that's an important point. And answering your question too, on, you know, continued learning. I always tell people, and it's absolutely true, you never stop learning, not in this business. It's changing so much. Screen technology is changing, workflows are changing, color management has, you know, been invented and started and matured in the time that I've been doing it. So I think from that point of view, you have to have resources. You can't do it all in a room grading. You need to take some time out. There was a question in the YouTube chat earlier about, is it is how important are trade shows. And that can be a very important learning resource, as well as meeting contacts and perhaps actually having a conversation or a beer with somebody that you've talked to online or on a forum or something. But nowadays, everybody has to be interactive. I think in the old days, sort of 30 odd years ago, you kind of learned from the company, but that's really too slow nowadays. You need to be in the community, and ICA and indeed Colorist Society is all about having that community and providing opportunities for people to get together and share information.
Yeah, we're seeing a bit of an increase of people sort of asking and wanting to get back into a classroom, which is good. And we can all probably agree that is definitely the better way to learn. We've had to do stuff on Zoom, still has value, but I don't think you can beat sitting in a room with other people that you can't hide. You have to share your screen. You've got to be up front what you're doing, and you will make mistakes, but that's how you learn. I want to take this right up to date. So there's a freelance colorist watching this. They maybe got 5-10 years experience. Is it worth them knocking on the door of Cheat and the Look, or do you prefer to promote in-house, or you always looking for different people? Maybe someone you didn't think was looking for a job and they secretly drop you an email. How does that work? And do people have a chance to move around if they've got that experience?
I mean, we're full at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay.
But yeah, you know, I love meeting colorists, finding out how they got into the industry, what their passions are. You know, I'm always up for sort of meeting people, keeping their name at the back of my mind. You know, people come and go. So it's, you know, I like to keep touch with quite a few freelancers and colorists out there. So when there is an opportunity, I have a sort of index of people to reach out to.
But you normally have staff and not freelancers come and go. So you're like a traditional shop with a roster of colorists.
We have a remote roster. We have some colorists in Europe, and we also have Ola now. We've just signed a Ukrainian colorist, and she's on a sort of unique contract that best serves her situation and ours. But traditionally, yes, we have in-house colorists that are here full time.
And that actually is similar to the model that we have here. We generally, everyone who works here is PAYE. And I think the reason for that is because there's a lot of different reasons. You're trying to create a company culture. And I think that is, you know, we're going through a lot of changes post-pandemic. I think you touched on there, Warren, about the interactivity. We're very fortunate that we have, I think, a good company culture. People come into this office, they want to come in. People do work a couple of days a week remotely, but most of the team come in. I think that's really important. What I would say is I have met and shared quite a lot of experience and had conversations with a lot of freelance colorists who have wanted to potentially look at joining here and leapfrog some of the other people that have been in the process. I always take a coffee where possible. I always try and reply back and say thank you very much for the email. I'm a firm believer in what goes around comes around. I mean, I've been running a facility for about 15 years now, 16 years I think it's coming up to. And you know, sometimes I think I'm sort of, you know, having a chat with somebody, giving them quite a lot of tips, and I may even let them come and sit with me in the grading suite, and then they disappear off to one of our rival companies, and I think I've sort of told them how to do stuff. But I take a long-term view on these things, which is what goes around comes around. And I hear some really nice things. People say, "Oh, I met that guy, Tom Urbye. You know, he's a nice guy. Yeah, he helped me out." And I think that, you know, those sort of things they're a good karma. And also Toby touched on, right, when you run a facility, you always do think, actually, this person may build their own client base. They might end up going from a junior colorist to a colorist at a very highly regarded company. And then when we're advertising, they might see that and drop me a line and go, "Hey, Thomas, look, do you think my CV might slot me straight in as a colorist now?" And then we might be able to accept at that point. And they'll never forget the time that we put in. And I might think, I really like that person. And then the stars align. And it could be 5 years from now, you never know. So same as Toby, it is harder for us to take on somebody with that level of experience because they would leapfrog unless we were doing a massive expansion at some point in the future. But that doesn't mean to say that we just ignore. I just ignore people and then don't take the coffee and the chat.
I think what you two guys are doing is ideal because you're building your brand and you're bringing these people through, which is your brand. You're like a family. What we've seen in Australia, it used to be very similar. Most of the post houses now don't carry a colorist because of the expense of it. So they've gone, well, we can save that amount of money straight away. The client walks in and they open up the freelance book and who do you want to use? Now that's okay, but then that client doesn't get a lot of continuity because then next time that person could be busy, they may be away, they might be on a feature, but they're doing it because of this cost thing, which I understand, but it means there's very few staff colorists here.
Can't be a busy facility.
No, but
surely if you're hiring freelancers 5 days a week, I can't see how that would be more economical than a couple of seniors.
No, and I think the downside from a client perspective in long form particularly is that, this is a slightly different topic, but I think for anyone who thinks they can really get to the top as a freelance colorist, there is one or two in long form, but that's very rare that they manage to do that. And I think that's not through lack of ability. It's because the modern post-production world of high-end TV drama and feature films are so VFX heavy. These jobs do not have a set start and end date. So if you think, I can be a freelance colorist and just drop in and do really big series, it doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for me as a CEO or for my team because we'll get the dates. And I think on one series, I won't name which one, we're on version 48 of the schedule and it's slipped by 3 months. Now they want continuity and they can have continuity through the fact that I'm always here. So I can always pop out and say hello, but so the rest of the team that they all know. When sometimes we get asked, it's quite rare, but it does happen. A client will say, we want to do it with the look, but I really want to bring my colorist. And we always say, with regret, we won't be able to do it. And the reason for that is just because we know that their availability will become a challenge, not because we try and not let them in here, but because grading and online and visual effects and the conform, all these things are a moving part. These series now have, Sex Education alone has 900 visual effects shots in it. Gangs of London, 1400. These shows are huge and you're constantly grading in a few more shots. And sometimes the VFX shots are the hardest to grade in because they were potentially very challenging for the VFX vendors to do. And they need support of the colorist to be adding a touch of grain, defocusing a little bit of stuff. If you were in for 2 weeks and you think, that's it, they won't be calling back, forget it. So I do think that the freelance market in long form, and Toby will have a lot more experience because he covers both sectors now, I think is a real challenge, and you have to be your eyes open if you think you can be a high-end TV or film colorist who's freelance. Toby, what?
Yeah, I'd just say in general, the allure of being a freelance colorist coming out of uni or NFTS or any of the masters programs, and you've got a good reel and you've got some clients, the allure of it. I mean, I guess I did it, so I'm a complete hypocrite, but I wouldn't advise it for anyone. It's quite, it's quite a strange thing. I am being completely hypocritical here because that's exactly what I did. But I'd never recommend it to anyone. I think it's very tempting to make that leap and go freelance too soon rather than put in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years at a facility to work your way up to a senior colorist.
But you also started a facility there, didn't you, Toby? That was the point. Your consistency was you started and you had your own facility that people would go to. So I did a bit of freelancing at the beginning as well, but I found it would only give me the type of work that a freelancer would be suitable for, which is, could you come in and just grade this 8-part doc for ITV or something? There's no VFX or anything. It's like, can you just come in and sort this out? What's your day rate?
Yeah,
You'll never get beyond that.
The main reason I set up Cheat was to work on projects that would go to facilities and not freelancers. So yeah, there we go.
Great. Now we're going to be wrapping this up. I've just got a little reminder. Thanks to LG. You can see the 2 LGs sitting behind me here. which are churning away here now. It's nearly 5 a.m. So yeah, it will still be light. Soon be light, people. It's great to get up early. I'll just put up the slide again, and there's a link in the chat. September the 22nd. Kevin and I will be talking about the LG monitors, what they're doing in the industry. You can win one of these, but you can only win it on the day. You can't go there now and win it. So don't try and log into that Zoom meeting, because it won't happen till the 22nd of September. There will be questions, and it will be based on the webinar. So you have to watch it, and you have to learn a bit about the webinar for you to win the monitor, because we want it to go to someone who's going to use it and put use of it into their facility. So thanks to them. The links are all in the chat, or you can find the information will be on the iColorist website nearer the time. Now, thanks very much, gentlemen. Where can anybody find you? Michael, where can people find you and get more information about what you're up to, buddy?
You can find me via the Met Film School website, and I can always type out my email address. Happy for people to come and ask questions.
Excellent, great. Thanks very much for jumping on board. Great insights. Thomas?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, obviously, as my name is there on the screen, and you can find other details about us and the company, and my email address is at thelooklondon.com. So have a look through the website, and by all means drop me a line. I'm always very happy to do mentoring or give people advice to try and get people into industry, particularly people at college who may be 16 to 18. I think we do lose a lot of people who decide not to pursue our industry. So I'm always really interested in people who are maybe doing A-levels and are not sure whether the media industry. So if anyone wants to talk about what the remuneration looks like in the industry long term, you know, what job security is like, always very happy to talk about that, because I think it's very important as we into the future.
Toby?
Toby Tomkins on Instagram. Thursdays and Fridays, I'm normally at Pub on the Park. LinkedIn as well.
From what time?
And yeah, toby@cheatit.co is my email address if you need to reach out.
Excellent, excellent, good. And Kevin and I can be found at the iColorist. So if you're interested in any training there, drop into iColorist.com and see what we're doing. We're going to be back on track next year. We said that last year. We will be, and hopefully mixers as well, proper mixers. So we'll be like jumping back to 2019.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Yeah, absolutely. Here. Thanks very much, folks, for joining, for supporting, obviously, training in the industry. And this obviously will be available on YouTube at any time. And we'd love to see you all on the next show. So thanks a lot for coming along.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gigi. Gigi's in the background producing this for us. And she's done a great job at 4 a.m. as well, may I add.